Pleasure now to be joined here on GCR by a man who is just in Baltimore this week, visiting Baltimore Ravens camp with his buddy Pat Kerwin on SiriusXM NFL Radio. He is former NFL quarterback. We try to pretend that was one particular team that he played for that we'll just never acknowledge that he did. He is our friend Jim Miller, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Jim, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's good to catch up, man. Thank you for taking the time.
You bet. Thanks for having me, man.
Jim, offensively, there's been so much made about new coordinator and all these new weapons and how things are going to change for the Baltimore Ravens. I know you're only there for a day and conversations, but do you start to have any sense as to what this might actually look like when we get to September for the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, I think it's coming together pretty well. I love the offensive line. I think they'll still be able to run the football very effectively for Baltimore. I don't think Todd Monken's going to flat out abandon it, but I think you can see that Lamar was making some plays on the outside, and obviously Odell Beckham Jr. Had probably 3 highlight reel plays that he made on the outside: a go route, really a tip ball in the end zone where he was able to tip it to himself over. I think it was Kayvon Seymour was the defensive back on that particular play, and they will be more explosive. They have guys that defy the X's and O's. You would say Lamar obviously defies the X's and O's. You would say that about Mark Andrews, in my opinion. And I think you'd say that about Odell Beckham Jr., and I really liked what I saw from Zay Flowers, the first-round draft pick from Boston College. So, they are much better offensively.
One of the things that a couple people have said to me is that expect the offense to be much faster than what we had seen in the past, knowing what they know about Todd Monken and what maybe the Ravens are trying to bite from other teams. Do you get the sense that that's going to be a priority for the Ravens, is to pick up the tempo?
Yeah, they had a no-huddle period yesterday when we were at practice. So I think they will be more up-tempo. They will be more spread out, in my opinion. And Todd will incorporate a lot of the things that not only that he did at Georgia, but stuff that really fits what Lamar Jackson's doing. Lamar has a very good intermediate completion percentage. So look for that to continue. But I just think they'll have more explosive plays on the outside where they'll take some chances to get some explosive plays down the field.
If we say on the offensive side of the ball, is there anything in particular that concerns you? Like, again, there's so much excitement about this. We all want to see it unfold. But is there anything that you say, all right, but quietly, I am maybe a little bit worried about this with the Ravens offense?
I would think it'd be the running back situation, right? They just signed Melvin Gordon. And, with J.K. Dobbins, to me personally, because he's got the same agent, I'd really take him off the PUP and I'd activate him. And here's the reason why. Because now you can then fine him, and then you could go out and sign a guy like Dalvin Cook. You know what I mean? And put some pressure on him. Because I like Melvin Gordon, but I think, he's got a little bit of a fumble history when you look at Melvin Gordon, and maybe he can find a role there, because that's probably the one situation where you feel a little bit uneasy because of the health concerns of not only Gus Edwards, but J.K. Dobbins. And now he's doing somewhat of a hold-in, I would think.
What do you do about that, Jim? By the way, we're chatting with Jim Miller here on GC.
I told you what I do. I'd take him off the PUP. I'd activate him. Then I'd fine him $50,000 a day, and then I'd go out and sign Dalvin Cook, who's with the same agent, and say, hey, either your guy comes in and starts working, or we're going to release him.
But I hear you. I hear you, but I feel like it's so much bigger than that. Like, I feel like you're dealing with a team that's got to figure out where they can even afford to pay running backs at all now that they're into the Lamar Jackson contract era of their franchise, right? If you're not willing to pay running backs, why switch which running back you pay? And I get the answer is Dalvin Cook is really good. Like, I do understand that's the answer, but man, I don't know. Like, can you afford to pay a quarterback and pay any running backs at all?
Well, I think obviously, we know where the money has been directed. It's going to receivers and it's going to quarterbacks, and that's why the running back market has somewhat been devalued here a little bit. But it is what it is at the end of the day. He's under contract. I think what's going to happen is he'll probably miss a couple of preseason games, but he's going to play ultimately. I mean, he's not going to miss out on those 17 weeks of a paycheck. So ultimately, he's going to be there.
I was talking about this with your partner yesterday. Do you get the sense that the maybe even quietly the Ravens are sort of acknowledging, it's not the end of the world to us that J.K. is not out there right now, and they're not going to say that publicly, but that we don't need him taking unnecessary hits at this point in training camp. if he's willing to show up 2 weeks before the season starts, we're good with that. Like, we're okay.
Yeah, well, he's missed a lot of games. There's a lot that he has to prove in order for Baltimore to want to pay him. He's missed a significant amount of games, and this is kind of the protest season. We've seen it with obviously Jonathan Taylor and what's going on over there for Indianapolis. Some other running backs have taken some big haircuts. Look at Joe Mixon, obviously there in Cincinnati,
Yep.
And that's just where it's at right now.
He is Jim Miller. He's with us here on GCR. Jim, I feel like, it's funny because this is very un-Ravens-like, that everybody's excited about the offense, and if there are questions, it might be on the other side of the ball. And specifically to me, it's the depth at both edge rush and at cornerback, where you're putting a lot of expectations on young players and David Ojabo and Odafe Owe, who as of yet haven't proved anything. And then in a secondary behind Marlon Humphrey, it's at cornerback specifically, there's not much of anything. How concerned are you about those two particular areas?
No, I think pass rush is really the one that I would focus on. There's corners out there that they could pick up, and there's corners that are going to be released. Obviously Marcus Peters signed with the Raiders, so that ship has sailed there. But I think you're right about the pass rush. Those guys are young. I talked to John Harbaugh yesterday. They were counting on Owe to come through, and they feel very good about David Ojabo. But let's face it, he doesn't have a lot of playing time coming off the Achilles injury from last year, and I think they're probably focused on picking up a guy there as well. And name that's floated out there is, they did have I think they talked to Clowney.
Oh yeah,
I think they talked to Clowney, but you just wonder why they just didn't re-sign Justin Houston. But that ship has sailed now that he's been signed. So Clowney would probably be the next name on the list that you even consider.
I've wondered kind of all off season, and it's interesting because they did, they extended Roderick Washington this week. Like, I've wondered if they have just utterly prioritized, we need to be younger in the front seven. Like, we have to be younger. We have to have, some of these guys come through for us, which sounds good. But there's, an inherent amount of risk that comes along with that, right? Like, it's not a guarantee it's all going to work out. And then I wonder if on the flip side, there's sort of a tacit acknowledgement that we are going to burden the offense a little bit more than we've burdened the defense in past years. Like, it's not something that's very Ravens-like, but are they prepared to make a shift of, we need the offense to shoulder this and to be the story of how we win, more so than we need the defense to be the story?
Yeah, I think it will be more complementary there. The offense is going to have to come through because you're right. You are going to have some growing pains with some young players, and they collectively have made that known, in my opinion. When you let guys like Calais Campbell and Houston and all these elder statesmen leave, and those guys have to step up, and I think they're counting on that. They're going to let these young players grow. There's a lot of teams that have done it. I'm looking at Tampa Bay today.
Mm-hmm.
They're going with a lot of young players as well. I do the Bears preseason games, and they elected to do it last year by playing all the rookies that they did and just watch them learn. And so I do think that the offense will have to come through more. And obviously with a healthy Lamar Jackson, you got a chance. Look at the record with him in there in the scoring with him as a starter. I think they average 28 points a game when he's on the field. Then when he's not there, you're only averaging 17.
Yep.
And so I do think the offense will be able to carry it more.
Jim, you mentioned your work with the Bears. I wonder what you thought of Roquan Smith as he came over. We had high expectations, and somehow we thought he was even better than that. Clearly, the Ravens felt that way by rewarding him with $20 million a season moving forward. A lot of people say, I don't care how good an off-ball linebacker is, you can't budget that much money for that type of player. But what did you expect in the move, and what did you think of what you saw and what the Ravens are going to get moving forward?
Yeah, I think the Ravens found out once you lost Ray Lewis and then you lost C.J. Mosley, you're kind of missing that dog, and I think they wanted to get another dog back in there, and that's what Roquan is. I mean, that guy is a high-intensity, heat-seeking missile who finds the football. And the Bears, the reason why they didn't work out a contract is they didn't want to invest. They just come out of cap jail, essentially, and they didn't want to go back into it. And so they elected to bite the bullet and move on and elected to make that trade. But Roquan is a hell of a player, and I think that was lacking prior to Roquan being added to the mix. As I mentioned, those two other great linebackers that Baltimore has known so well and what they're known for.
Jim, let me try to bring it all back together this way. We know that the first answer is Lamar Jackson has to stay healthy. Like, we understand that. But in a murderer's row of an AFC, how can the Ravens separate themselves and finally take that step and have playoff success in the Lamar Jackson era?
Well, I think obviously those common opponents that you play. I mean, minimum you got to split in division to have a shot, I would think. And you look at Lamar; he has not really fared well against Pittsburgh. I don't even think he's played all that much because he's been hurt against the Steelers. But and then of course those common opponents that you play, like whether it's the LA Chargers late in the year, that's a primetime ball game that I think you got to really take care of business, in my opinion. Or a team like Indianapolis, where you got some common opponents with the teams in your division that you got to take care of business and get those in your win column as well.
All right, Jim Miller, I see you guys are headed out west.
Yeah, we're doing Tampa today. We'll hit Jacksonville tomorrow, and then we'll head out to see the Las Vegas Raiders, and then I'll be back in Chicago for the first preseason game against Tennessee.
It's a heck of a schedule you put together for this week, man. Kind of doing a little bit of the entire. That's cool. I get it. It beats working for a living.
I love it. Keeps my head in the game, man, so I enjoy it.
Anything else we can plug for you, sir?
No, we're good, man. Thanks for having me.
Always appreciate it. At Jim Miller _NFL on the website formerly known as Twitter. Jim, appreciate you spending a few minutes with us as always, man.
You bet.